The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Hello everyone, welcome in to Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, and as always I'm joined by my co-host Nathan Glidewell. As always, we're going to recap the coaching carousel in college football, go over some award winners for college football, and then dive into what happened in college basketball for Alabama and Auburn this past weekend. So let's get started, Nathan, with the coaching carousel for college football updates. First, Duke hired Penn State defensive coordinator Manny Diaz to be the university's next head football coach. Tulane hired Troy head football coach John Summerall to the same position. Louisiana Monroe hired New Mexico offensive coordinator and former UAB interim head football coach Brian Vincent to be the university's next head football coach. Middle Tennessee hired former Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason to be the university's next head coach. New Mexico hired former BYU and Virginia head football coach Bronco Mendenhall to the university's next head coach. James Madison hired Holy Cross head coach Bob Chesney to the same position. UTEP hired Austin Peay head coach Scotty Walden to the same position. And then Wyoming promoted defensive coordinator Jay Sawville to the head coach position. Out of all those, Nathan, any of those you think are home run hit hires or anyone you like in particular?
Yeah, I like John Summerall out of Troy coming over to Tulane. Troy had a fantastic season. They won their conference and they get to a bowl game. Just what he's been able to do in the past few seasons with Troy has been nothing short of spectacular. And then you look at Tulane now. They've had great seasons, back-to-back great seasons. And obviously with the head coaching job open, they needed someone who could come right in and keep them at that winning level. And I think they got their guy to do that. Tulane, they had to play Ole Miss this year. They competed well in that game. I really thought they had a chance to win that game. Of course, playing with a backup quarterback. So it really says a lot about Tulane and how far they've come over the past few years. And getting a guy in John Summerall to come and replace your head coach, it really means a lot to the university, I'm sure, and I think it will keep them at that winning level. The only question is for Troy, where do they go from here?
Yeah, I think another home run hit for me was Middle Tennessee hiring Derek Mason as their head coach. When they fired Rick Stockstill, a lot of people were kind of wondering who they were going to get to replace him because Stockstill had been there for 18 years, I think. What was the exact number there? For a long time. He was one of the most tenured head coaches in college football, and they fired him. Everybody was like, well, you got to land some big name here to replace Stockstill, and getting Derek Mason, who coached at Vanderbilt. I know they weren't great at Vanderbilt under Derek Mason, but they were okay. He's coached at various places like Stanford. He was defensive coordinator for David Shaw. He's coached players like Richard Sherman. So I think he's a great developer of talent, a great defensive mind. And if he gets the right offensive coordinator around him and he can recruit well at Middle Tennessee, who is in a hot spot or a hot zone for some recruits, I think Middle Tennessee can turn this program around and maybe be one of the premier mid-major programs that we look towards. All right, and as Nathan kind of brought up, Troy and Nevada are the only FBS teams with head football coach openings left. All right, Nathan, the college football awards happened this past weekend. Let me just go through them here, and you stop me at whatever point you disagree with the award winner here. Heisman, Jane Daniels, the quarterback from LSU. Maxwell, which is a Player of the Year award, went to Michael Penix Jr., quarterback from Washington. Walter Camp, Player of the Year, was Jaden Daniels once again. A Home Depot award, which was the Coach of the Year, went to Kalen DeBoer for Washington. Jim Thorpe, the best defensive back, went to Trent Taylor from Air Force. Davey O'Brien, which is best quarterback, went to Jaden Daniels. The Remington Award for the best center went to Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. The Lou Groza Award, which is the best place kicker, went to Graham Nicholson from Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, that's the one I was having to have on. I had bias, of course. Will Reichert, I think, had a good chance to win the award. I get he didn't have as good a stats this season as Graham Nelson did. But I felt like the moments when he made kicks were bigger than anything Graham Nicholson could have attempted in the games he played. So I feel like that should have had something to say that Will Reichert, now being, of course, college football's leading scorer of all time. But I get it's a season award, not a career award. And Graham Nicholson definitely had a good season, and he took care of it on the field. So he is deserving of the award. I would have went in a different direction.
Yeah, it just came down to that game where Will Reichard missed those 2 field goals, and it kind
Yeah,
of just tanked.
that Tennessee
That
game.
Yeah, that was the one, and then he missed the one against Auburn, which kind of once again tanked his chances here because Graham Nicholson only missed a field goal and then missed an extra point.
Mm-hmm.
The Butkus Award, the best linebacker, went to Peyton Wilson from NC State. The Doak Walker Award, you're not down with the best line.
I think Jeremiah Trotter had a good argument to win the Butkus Award.
I don't know. You look at Peyton Wilson; he had, I think, 60 plus tackles, had 6 sacks. So, and even though he's at NC State, I mean, if that was an Alabama player there'd be no argument anybody would be having. It's just he was at NC State. Not a lot of people watch NC State games, but I've seen him a few times here and there, surfing through channels, watching various college football games, and he's a stud. The Doak Walker Award, best running back, went to Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State. The Blitnikoff Award, best wide receiver, went to Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State.
No,
and apparently this award was separated by 1 vote between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors should have won this award. Honestly, you had a good argument to say Rome Odunze should have won this award too. But for me, I looked at what Malik Neighbors did throughout the season. He had the Heisman winning quarterback thrown to him. I'll give him that. But this plays he made, he was the number 1 target on the team, the go-to guy for Jaden Daniels, and that really says a lot. What Marvin Harrison Jr., not trying to take away from what he was able to do this season, but there were moments in games where he kind of just disappeared, and Malik Neighbors was always there, and no matter what scenario. So I think Malik Neighbors should have won the award.
I mean, you look at the stats, Marvin Harrison Jr., 1,200 yards receiving, 14 touchdowns. He had PFF grade, Pro Football Focus grade of 89.4. Then you look at Malik Neighbors, 1,500 receiving yards, had 14 touchdowns, and then had a 93.1 Pro Football Focus grade. And there's a whole plethora of things that Malik Neighbors was better at than Marvin Harrison Jr. And I know it's not always a stat award to say all the time, but I think Malik Neighbors was much more dominant because, like you said, Nathan, there were games where Marvin Harrison Jr. was just non-existent for Ohio State, and it felt like Malik Neighbors and even Rome Odunze were a lot more consistent than him throughout the entire season. I don't care if it was the quarterback play. I mean, still.
Yeah.
The John Mackey Award, the best tight end, went to Brock Bowers from Georgia. He's the first tight end to win the award multiple times. The best, the Outland Trophy, which is the best interior lineman, defensive or offensive, went to Devondre Sweat from Texas, the big guy that caught that touchdown in the Big 12 championship a couple weeks ago. You had Ray Guy Award, the best punter, went to Torrey Taylor for Iowa. I don't think he could have given it to anybody else here, Nathan. I think he was close to breaking the NCAA record for punting yards in a season, and
pretty sure he's going to break in the bowl game.
He probably will. The Bednarik Award, Defensive Player of the Year, went to Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from NC State. The Bronco Nagurski Award, Defensive Player of the Year, went to Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. The Burlsworth Trophy, the top former walk-on, went to Curtis Schrader from Missouri. The William V. Campbell Trophy, the academic Heisman, went to Bo Nix. I guess it was sort of the here's Bo Nix, here's your trophy for showing up. It felt bad for him. He didn't get anything after having been in college for 6 years?
15 years, I don't know. He's used up all his eligibility. I know that.
And the Broyles Award top assistant went to Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator from Iowa. You have any gripes about that top assistant?
No, I feel like the rest of the list was pretty head on. I know there's a few guys who make arguments for in those scenarios, but I think that everyone who won the award definitely deserved it.
Yeah, they did just release the AP All-American teams this week, or I guess today as well. The first team, the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, the running backs, Ollie Gordon, and then Cody Schrader. Tackles, Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu. Guards, Cooper Beebe and Zach Zenter. The center, Jackson Powers Johnson. Tight end, Brock Bowers. Wide receivers, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze. The all-purpose player, Travis Hunter. Kicker, Graham Nicholson. As if he won the place kicker award, he should be there. The edge rushers for the first team defense, Latu, Jalen Green, interior, that's the edge rushers, the interior linemen, Devondre Sweat, and then Jerson Newton. Linebackers, Peyton Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper, and then Dallas Turner. Cornerbacks, Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Safeties, Malachi Stark, Xavier Watts, and then defensive back, Taryn Arnold, with the punter being Torrey Taylor. Any gripes, complaints about that first team, Nathan?
I think there should have been a spot somewhere for Chris Braswell in the season he had, but with the guys that are already on the list, I mean, they just had fantastic seasons. I just felt like all season long, Chris Braswell playing alongside Dallas Turner, both of them had basically similar impacts on the game. And you can make a really good argument for a guy like Chris Braswell to be included on the first team. Although all the guys are on there really deserved where they got. Looking at the whole list in general, I mean, thinking about like putting this team out in the field, fielding a team like this, and just thinking how dominant it would be, it'd be absolutely insane. Definitely a national championship caliber team, and that's what I go through every year. Is I look at the first team, and who makes it, and I determine if this team can win a national championship, and this one definitely can.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and hop into college basketball, Nathan, because y'all can go. The AP's released the rest of the second team and third team.
Yeah.
There's some notable players on there, like Michael Penix and stuff like that, as expected. No really big surprises. So let's hop into college basketball, Nathan, starting with Alabama. They're 6-3, have their 3 losses being to Ohio State, Clemson, and then this past weekend losing to Purdue 92-86. I'm gonna let you go ahead and jump into this, Nathan. What happened to Alabama versus Purdue and the Zach Edey show?
Okay, like I try to keep my cool here because this game's going to get me riled up after watching it this weekend. Alabama jumped off to a really hot start. I mean, I think they made like 10 3-pointers in the first half. That tells you the story. And they went into the half with, I believe, a 2-point lead. It says a lot for what Mark Sears has been able to do for this team. He had 35 in this game and shot lights out, and basically was the whole team's offense. Really struggled to find offense along the way. But in this game, Alabama made 19 3-pointers out of the 40 some they attempted.
46.
46. So very, very good. But what it comes down to, Purdue, they shot the ball well as well. They were like 8 of 18 from 3. Zach Edey is just a different monster, but I do have a few gripes about the way he plays. He's a very physical player. I don't want to take that away from him because I like people who are physical when it comes to basketball. But the number of foul calls he gets in a game is absolutely absurd. Purdue attempted a crazy number of free throws. There were like 23 foul calls on Alabama in this game. 2 players fouled out. That being Pringle and Wagyu. It's crazy how lenient they are with Zaki on one end of the floor, and then when it comes to the other end, they're calling everything so tightly. I felt like that changed the outcome of the game. Zaki had 35, and a lot of times he was able just to create offense off of Braden Smith and what he was able to create in the pick and roll. But other times it was just Zach Edey being able to get to the free throw line. I believe he went perfect from the free throw line of the day.
11 for 11.
Oh, yeah, 11 for 11, which is insane. But it really shows how much Alabama is improving. I believe they had the best offense in the country whenever they can shoot the basketball well. It comes down to the defense. Really missing Charles Bediako this season. I really wish he wouldn't have gone to the draft because the number one thing this team is missing is rim protection. Really struggled with it in this game. Although I think having multiple players like Nick Pringle, like Muhammad Wagner step in, even Grant Nelson stepped in a little bit at the 5 there to help guard Zach Edey in the paint. It shows a lot of adversity because of the size difference. And this team's progressing a lot. This is a young team. You talk about the number of pieces that were taken away in the draft, and where they are now as a team. Tough losses to Ohio State and Clemson. Both those games, the other team just shot better than them. Same thing with Purdue. So if you want to beat this Alabama team, you have to shoot better than them. But as far as Alabama's defense, it has to continue to improve. Perimeter defense, guarding screens, knowing how to help off screens is a big thing for this team to learn. They're starting to play with more hustle, which I'm sure Nate Oates likes. You just got to keep getting better every single week. Non-conference schedule does not stop slowing down. They play at Creighton this weekend, and then the following Wednesday they go to Phoenix to play Arizona. So 2 really, really tough out-of-conference games they had to play. you're not going to win every single out-of-conference game, and that's the biggest thing for this team. It's not like last year when they were able to beat North Carolina and Michigan State, and they really competed well in these tournaments. Now it's just about discovering who you are as a team and where you can build on heading into conference play, which will start up in January.
Yeah, I think you kind of brought up a little bit, Nathan, but how newly formed this Alabama team is. You talk about it. They only had 3 returning players, that being Sears, Griffin, and then Nick Pringle. And outside of that, it's been a whole new roster. And outside of the roster, I mean, the coaching staff is all new. Nato's lost all his assistants, so this has really been a rebuilding process for this team. Everybody's learning each other's what each other is good at and what they're not good at, how to fit the pieces fit with each other and stuff like that. So it's really just a learning process. And Nate and Alabama scheduled a really tough out-of-conference schedule, but I think will turn out really well for them in the end because you get all these challenges like Purdue and Creighton and Arizona because all these teams are really good. They'll be playing in March. Hopefully Alabama will be, but that
I'm sure they
remains to be
will
seen.
be. I mean, the amount of competitiveness throughout the game, the commentators were acting like this is basically an Elite Eight game. I mean, it's a perfect example. Both these teams, with the amount of talent they have, I mean, that's what it looked like. Very, very competitive back and forth. Just, man, it was a tough loss this weekend. I will say that. There were times in the game I felt like Alabama had it, and I think after Natives had gotten the technical, everything just kind of started falling apart. We lost a lot of momentum. Purdue went on a run. Braden Smith pretty much had a run of his own. He was able to shoot lights out in the game, which really helped out Purdue.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big thing for Purdue going into the rest of the season is who's going to step up outside of Zach Edey because we see when Zach Edey struggles, especially in the tournament. We saw it last year with Fairleigh Dickinson or FDU when he struggled. There was not really a lot of people to pick up the slack. And if Braden Smith can continue to play like this, if a guy like Fletcher Lawyer can play like we expect him to play, then maybe this team can turn it around and maybe do something in March this time and not lose to a 16 seed or a 15 seed again. All right, Nathan, wrapping up with Auburn basketball here. They're 6-2 with losses to Baylor and then Appalachian State. But they did beat Indiana this past week, 104-76. And you look at the Auburn Tigers here, shot lights out from 3, very uncharacteristic of them to shoot that well. Made 14 threes, shot 48% from the 3-point line. So, like I said, uncharacteristic for them to make that many 3-pointers, but it was good to see. Aiden Holloway, 24 points. Jalen Williams, 24. Janiah Broome did not play particularly well, only had 2 points. But we see this Auburn team, a lot of players on this roster can step up at any time. What did you see from Auburn, Nathan, that you really liked outside of the 3-point shooting, obviously?
Well, they've improved their offense from the first few games. Offense had been the main thing they had struggled with, mainly just creating it and finding a good rhythm. And that always comes with starting a new season and having a new roster, having to build chemistry with the guys around you. Auburn has been able to play incredible defense, especially in the first few games. You look at the Notre Dame game, holding Notre Dame to 59 points. That was nothing short of spectacular. And then you look at the Virginia Tech game, holding them to 57. I know those aren't particularly great teams. They're not popping off the page with talent. But the way Auburn has been able to just move bodies around and plug and play people and having them come in and play terrific defense has really just generated offense on the other end of the court, especially with transition. You talk about this Indiana game, 104 points against Indiana is crazy because Indiana is a very, very, very talented team. I know they've lost a lot of people the past few years, but for Auburn to come out and do this, shooting 49, almost close to 49% from the 3-point line, very uncharacteristic, like you said. But it is something to continue to build off. Just like Alabama, you just got to figure out what kind of team you are at this point in time before you get into conference play. Because once you get into conference play, you don't have time to just sit around and figure it out. But this shows signs of Auburn being able to improve where they need to improve. And I think they're going to turn out to be a very well-rounded team coming into conference play and then maybe into the tournament if they do end up making it. But Aiden Holloway, it's terrific player. I know before the season even started, you could highlight what he was going to be able to do, and he's coming in and he's making a valiant effort for this Auburn team. And then got to give credit to Jalen Williams the way he played this weekend. Just got to keep winning. That's all Auburn has to do.
Yeah, it's wild to me that Auburn scored 104 points and Janiah Broome had a whopping 2. I mean, He's arguably the best player on that team outside of a guy like Aiden Holloway, who is this otherworldly type talent. But you look at this Auburn team, and Janai Broom's what you would consider the focal point of the team, and for him only to have 2 points and really struggle and score 104 points, I think is really inspiring and good to see from an Auburn fan's perspective, but also Bruce Pearl to see, hey, if we have this guy struggle, we can have some like Aiden Holloway step up, or even off the bench, you had KD Johnson and Trey Donaldson step up. So I think this Auburn team is really deep, has a lot of good talent, and I think they're miles better than what last year's team was, which I think is great for them. All right, Nathan, before we get out of here, who's the most surprising team to you thus far throughout the season? Like who, whether it be somebody like Clemson or James Madison, or maybe it's somebody like Arizona who's unbeaten and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would go with Clemson, definitely. The way they've been able to shoot the ball. I mean, I go back to the Alabama game. They were just able to make everything. Late shot, it didn't matter. Creating off the dribble, spot up shooters. Everyone was just able to knock down shots, and it didn't matter who was in the game for Clemson. They were just able to shoot the ball efficiently, and that's what's kept Clemson unbeaten this far in the season. Is the way they've been able to generate offense. Not to mention their defense being able to just move guys around, excellent on the rotation. Just thinking back to the Alabama game, and had they were able to rotate the shooters effectively and force the bad shot and run people off the 3-point line, is why Clemson is undefeated thus far in the season.
Yeah, I think for me, James Madison is a really surprise team. They beat Michigan State earlier in the season. I know that's not a great looking win right now, considering how Michigan State is playing, but this team has 4 10-plus point per game scores. They're really guard kind of centric, and I think James Madison is a really big surprise thus far going into the season. Nathan, who's the most disappointing team thus far?
I think that disappointing is a term used to describe a team as a whole whenever they've played through a season. So I'm not going to go ahead and give you a team that's disappointing so far because there's a lot of basketball left to be played. And if I identify a team right now, then it's going to come back to bite me at the end of the season.
Let me reword it. Who are you surprised is struggling early in the season? That may be better.
I'd say Arkansas. Arkansas has a lot of talent, but you look at what they were able to do this offseason. A lot of people come in through the transfer portal. You talk about chemistry issues early on in the season, and that's definitely looked to be the case. They've struggled to create offense during certain times, and they've lost a lot of games they shouldn't have. Eric Musselman, he's a good head coach. I think Arkansas fans can really trust him to get the team back on track. But if you wanted to put a title of disappointing so far, it would definitely go to Arkansas.
I look at 2 teams for me. You look at Michigan State. They were ranked, I think, 4th in the AP poll preseason. They returned a lot of players, Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard, Malik Hall, Jaden Adkins. The only person that's really playing meaningful minutes that they brought in was freshman Cohen Carr. And, I mean, this team's, they're veterans. They have Tom Izzo leading them. And they're not playing good. I believe they're 4-5. They have a losing record.
Yeah, they've struggled.
They were doing really good in the tournament last year. Everybody's like, this Michigan State team's, like I said, returning a lot of talent. Tom Izzo's leading it. I mean, and it's just the wheels have fallen off. I don't know where it's at. The players aren't playing it to the standard. It's just disappointing. But also Duke is pretty disappointing to me as well. Once again, they return a lot of players: Filipowski, Roach, Proctor, the guard. And they're struggling. I know they brought in guys like Jared McKay and Caleb Foster, but this team lost 3 games. They've lost to Arkansas. It's not a great look for Duke or Michigan State thus far. But I think with the coaches they have right now, John Shire at Duke and Tom Izzo at Michigan State, they can turn it around pretty quickly. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.